It is that time of year, and this is when CES happened. This is the largest consumer electronic trade shows where many of the companies would come and showcase their new product or show us future products that could be coming down the pipeline in a few years' time. Here are some of the things I find notable at this year's CES 2024. Let's find out together. This is ArtIsRight. This is going to be a longer video that covers many topics. I'll leave a link to the various sections in the description so you can jump ahead if you like. So first, because we cover a lot of computer displays, the one thing I want to touch on first is TVs and display. The one notable trend that I have been seeing throughout the years, especially for Video Pro, is that the lines between TV and computer monitors are really starting to blur together now, where features and color gamut coverage are really starting to look very similar to each other. And if you are a Video Pro, a video creator, using a TV, I've known many of them that does that, it is something that makes absolutely perfect sense. However, if you are a printing photographer and you need 99% Adobe RGB, you would like to get hardware calibration, I hardly think that that will come to a full TV set anytime soon, specifically combining the hardware calibration part and also 99% Adobe RGB. So there's still going to be an area where a niche is still needed for computer monitors. Now, when it comes to TV itself this year at CES, what I have been noting, the trend is that OLED is pretty much stealing the show. Many of the companies are now releasing OLED displays here and there, with the exception of one. And we didn't see any new TVs from them this year, and that is Sony. So Sony is really going all in on mini LED, and you can watch other channels. Sony invite a press over to their headquarters in Japan and show off the new mini LED technology that I think is really cool. But from all the other companies, OLED is the star of the show. Now, specifically for me, what it was most impressive about this was LG transparent OLED. Now, there's also a roller in the back as well that can roll up and make the OLED no longer transparent, or you can have it transparent so it can go up and down. But what I think is also really cool about those transparent OLED as well is that they are pretty much wireless. So you only need to plug them in. All the signal for the TV itself is transmitted wirelessly through a box that's sitting somewhere in the room, and it doesn't necessarily have to even be next to the display. Now that is cool, and it's really one of those things where you see it and you're like, hey, you know what? I am living in a sci-fi future now. That's awesome. When it comes to computer displays, we are seeing a lot more of the OLED really coming into play a role. A couple things that we're seeing with these OLED are high refresh rate, better color gamut coverage, and also response time. But mostly what I'm seeing from all these displays, they're really gaming-centric displays. Now, when we see gaming-centric displays, there's a couple of things that happen. A lot of the tuning for those displays itself, the calibration, the factory, and so forth, are going to be geared towards gaming, meaning more saturated colors and so forth. So even though it may have, for instance, 100% P3 gamut coverage, it might not necessarily be the most accurate for Pro Creative Workflow. Can it work for Pro Creative Workflow with a software calibration on top? Probably, but that's something to note about these displays coming out. Now, the other thing that I've also been seeing as well is that we're seeing 27, 32-inch OLED display, all these things, and 27 and 32-inch seems to be the de facto size now. We're not seeing that many larger displays being released, and the smaller ones, I mean, not that many are looking into it. But the one interesting thing that I have been noting is that they're still all 4K. We're not really seeing the breaking the barrier into the 5K OLEDs just yet, and that's something that I really want to see this year, is more 5K display coming around, but we're not really seeing that. Now, to really think from a gamer perspective, you want somewhat less pixels. You don't want to be driving that many pixels around because the graphic card have to work that much harder, pushing, not only just 60, but greater than 60 frames per second sometimes, especially on a 4K display that has a high refresh rate. A couple things to note about that too is that 5K is something we're waiting for. 5K with a high refresh rate is something that can be done with the current standard that just recently been ratified, but it's going to take some time before that even comes around. And whether that comes in the form of OLED or not is still yet to be seen. So CES this year have not answered all these questions for me just yet. All right, so that's kind of where I am at right now. 5K, it's not around that much. We'll see if 5K comes to Pro creator displays later this year. That's something that we're going to have to keep an eye out for. All right, the next thing I want to touch on is computers, specifically laptop. Now, you know, if you follow my channel, that I have extensively reviewed Macs, and I've been wanting to get into reviewing PCs. So there are a few PC manufacturers that I really do like. In fact, I just recently reviewed a Razer, and this time around in this year, Razer is introducing their first 18-inch 4K 165 Hz display. And they do have a few units on the show floor. However, those are still sample units. They're not fully finalized yet. So my guess is that that will come out later this year. But that it was very interesting to see, because personally, I have the Razer Blade 18, and to have a low resolution display inside that laptop, I mean, it's still noticeable that it is a high refresh rate. However, the pixels are a little bit further apart, and I really want something that's a little bit more akin to Retina or have a higher pixel density in general. As usual, Razer is what I would call the Apple equivalent of PC world, because they use all CNC aluminum. They kind of started out with that, which is really awesome. Now, along with that, they also released the Razer Blade 16, which has the world first 16-inch 240 Hz OLED display, and they really go out this time around and proudly announce that it is a Samsung OLED display on the inside. So there's like some co-branding involved there, which I find interesting. And another trend that's also changing as well, because most of the time these laptop manufacturers don't necessarily like to tell you who their supplier for the display is, but this time around they're coming out saying it's Samsung, so that's interesting to see. And they also have a Razer Blade 14, which has an AMD chip on the inside. Now, fingers crossed, hopefully we'll get some to do a review and a calibration guide in studio for this current generation. I'm in touch with someone from Razer. We'll see where that takes us. Next up is Asus ROG. Now, there are multiple different ROG Republic of Gamers that I've found, but I would say they're mid-tier. The G14 and 16 now have OLED construction, which is much better, because I also have one of those. The older generation is built out of plastic. It's a little bit wobbier. I don't really like it as much, but their current generation now is built out of CNC aluminum. That's really great to see. And they also put OLED display on the inside. Now, what's really most notable about the G14 and 16 is that there is the gaming or the ROG utility that's built into the laptop. It pretty much runs on top of Windows. But in that utility, there is the ability to do a software calibration on that display now, built into the laptop. So this means that you don't necessarily have to use Calibrite software solution to run a calibration. You can use Asus built-in ROG solution to really run the color calibration for the gamut of display. I want to really see how that's going to work out. I'm trying to arrange and see if we can get one of their machines in to test out that feature specifically. So stay tuned to the channel for that. Fingers crossed again, hopefully we get something like that in. But most interesting as well is the fact that you can go in and change the color gamut of the display, in addition to all the gaming tuning modes in these ROG laptops. So I thought that was interesting. Another thing from Asus that we have seen, and we've seen Asus pushing the boundaries of display by quite a bit. They have a dual screen OLED computer that I thought was rather neat. It's more of like a business computer per se, rather than a gaming or a hardcore creative computer. But it is very neat to see that they're really pushing that, because I mean, I think the boundaries is always going to be better when there's a company that is pushing it, because it's going to really encourage the competitors to pretty much do the same or innovate in a different way. And in the end, as a consumer, we generally win from that. Next up is MSI. They have their new top-tier 18-inch gaming laptop with mechanical keyboard. That is the Titan 18HX. It has a mini LED with UHD plus resolution, 1000 nits, and 100% coverage of DCI-P3. Now, we're going to see a lot of these laptops this year coming up with a coverage of 100% DCI-P3. Really amazing color gamut. And one thing I want to say about that, and this will be the last time I'm going to quip about that in this video, is that this is the color gamut coverage and not necessarily color accuracy. I see so many people out there saying that, oh, hey, it has 100% DCI-P3. This means it's color accurate. Not necessarily. So I just want to point it out right now. It has this particular one, the Titan 18HX, have a seamless glass trackpad that is really awesome. I mean, the coefficient of friction on that glass is just really nice, because it's not a glossy, it's somewhat of a matted glass. I really love the feel of that. But MSI is also releasing, in addition to all this, numerous laptops, but a couple of other ones that I want to point out is the Creator 16 AI Studio that has very similar screen to the 18-inch Titan HX, but is more creator-centric. So this is more of a lighter laptop. It has less, thermal dissipation overall to overpower the machine, but it is something that does have a good video card, and you can really spec this machine out to a high spec. Now, the main question would be, if you are a creative, like, should you be choosing a top-tier gaming machine to do your work if you need a portable computer on the PC side of things, or should you go for a creator machine? And I think this would be a good question to probably tackle and answer, rather than just talking about this from a gaming perspective. As a creator, which one would you benefit from more? And is having the heavier machine with the higher power that requires a bigger power brick worth it for you to really carry around, or having something lighter is actually nicer to have? So those would be something to think about. Now, another thing that I want to point out about the Creator 16 AI as well is that it's a very light laptop and is also built out of magnesium alloys. So they have actually played that game right, and I thought that would be very interesting. One last thing from MSI that I want to point out is that they have a portable gaming device that is very similar to a Steam Deck, and is running full window. The nice part about that is, rather than those Deck running on a Qualcomm chip, the MSI one is running on a full Intel chip. Now, I'm not fully versed in here. I just want to point it out. I thought that was a very good differentiator. Now, some of you out there that knows more about this can also comment on this as well. But anyway, all right. So that is pretty much the laptopscape so far, what I have seen, what I thought was very interesting. Now, the next company that I want to talk about is UGreen. If you're familiar with them, they make a lot of chargers for laptops, for phones, and so forth. You've probably seen them around before. But this year, what they are really doing is pushing into the NAS, Network Attached Storage lineup. And they have this release in China for quite some time already, but they are now launching this in the US. So what's interesting about their NAS is that it has built-in dual 10 gigabit, at least on the 8 bay one anyway. It also has Thunderbolt built into the NAS itself, is running on an Intel chip. Supposedly, based on my question of the product managers, it can do simultaneous connection with 10 gigabit Ethernet and also a Thunderbolt connection. That would be really interesting to see if it can really handle both, and how would it handle network connection, file access, and so forth. That's the one thing that I want to find out. You can expand the NAS itself with NVMEs and also memory, and based on what my conversation with them is so far, they don't have any brand restrictions on the memory or on the NVMEs. As far as hard drive goes, you can put any drive in, and they also have a way to really allow you to enable and utilize the most amount of space on mixed capacity drive. This is very similar to Synology Hybrid RAID. They say they have something like that. So we shall see, how they're going to implement that. Because when it comes to something like this, it's really a proprietary RAID that functions similar to a RAID, but all these are going to be proprietary to each of these companies. So personally, I saw the 8 bay one. I thought that was interesting. Let's see if we can get one to do a review. Now, another small NAS that they have that is really cool is a unit that's really small, but it enables you to put in 4 NVMEs in there, and you can bond them together depending on how you want to set them up. And with that, you now have a portable, fast drive. Now, what I think was really nice about that drive itself, or that unit that you can put in 4 NVMEs, those NVMEs are not used as a cache, but they're used as the primary device. And they also have 10 gigabit and also Thunderbolt built in. This will answer a lot of questions for a creative out there that wants really fast, large storage pool, because you can just simply get that, plug in the NVMEs, and when you're on the road, just simply use Thunderbolt. When you're back in the studio, plug it into 10 gigabit, and that should cover you both. That would be very interesting to see if we can get that into the review. All right, I also got a chance to tour Sony booth. There's a lot of things happening there, but we got to play with PS5 VR in both GT7 and Ghostbusters. I haven't played with VR on the PS5 before. It's very interesting to see how it feels. As far as how I would like it long term, I'm not sure yet. I don't think necessarily going through those 2 demos has fully convinced me yet that VR is the way for me to pretty much game. And for the most part, I mean, I haven't powered on my PlayStation 5 that much at all in the past few months. It's just been crazy busy. But the other thing too is, in the GT5 demo they also have the Fanatic wheel there, and I got a chance to try those, and my God, those steering wheels are really awesome. So I just want to point that out. A few other things that I've seen that many companies are doing is they're leaning hard into the dock for both Mac and PC, and Thunderbolt 5 seems to be the star of the show. However, there are only a few companies that really is willing to think out of the box and say, we're not just only going to put a gigabit Ethernet in, we're going to put a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet into this Thunderbolt 5 dock. Now, as far as Thunderbolt 5 docks itself, I mean, this is really more for something that's going to be released later this year, because there's not that many computers yet that are using Thunderbolt 5. I mean, the current Apple crop of computers right now are still using Thunderbolt 4 if you're from the Apple world. There are a few PCs that they have announced this year, laptops anyway, that has Thunderbolt 5 in there, but more are going to come out throughout the year. So that's something for us to keep our eyes on. There's a lot of robotic things to really do different things around the house, automation and so forth. We're going to go over that much because I don't cover that so much on my channel. But the one thing that is really near and dear to my heart is an espresso or coffee machine. I have those, and I was super surprised because we were just walking by and we saw people lining up, like, what are you lining up for? Like, coffee. I'm like, cool. And apparently this is from Bosch. So Bosch makes appliances to do pretty much everything, but they're also now getting into the coffee automated espresso machine game. Now, I'm coming from a perspective of a person who owned multiple Juras and also Philips Seiko. There's a difference in pros and cons between all those machines. Seeing Bosch jump into this, I think, is rather interesting. And based on my questioning with the product managers so far, they say that, you know, you can pretty much take out the brew group to really wash and everything. So it's going to be more, I would say, akin to a Philips Seiko rather than a Jura that has everything locked in on the inside of the machine. So we shall see. I mean, when they release this product, I think it's going to be a whole lineup, and I'll keep an eye out for that and see if we can get one anyway. I mean, might as well review a coffee and espresso machine, right? That also can connect to Wi-Fi in this channel. Why not? I mean, I drink coffee every day anyhow. Okay. A few things here. We're almost wrapping this up. I have also stopped by Canon Booth, and I'm going to say this. Canon arm mount, they are really innovating in the arm mount lenses like there is no other. There are a few of their lenses that I have a chance to just try on in person that I thought was really cool. The compact 70 to 200, both f4 and 2.8 are really amazing. They also have a fixed 2.8 that I believe is like 24 to 105 or something like that. I don't have the focal length, remember exactly, but it's one of their newer lenses, really awesome. And there's a few other ones as well that they're really pushing the boundaries for what they can do with mirrorless beyond what Nikon, what Sony and everyone else is doing. So I want to point it out. I thought that was very interesting. And Sony booth itself, by the way, there was none of the cameras or anything. There was just the high-end cinema cameras they have there this year around. So they're really taking a total different approach. But I mean, with Sony anyway, when they announce any alpha product, they just do a mid-year, they do a virtual release and so forth. They invite a lot of press into their events. So it's done a lot differently based on that. But I thought it was very interesting. Oh, and Canon also was showing their VR lens in person as well. This is pretty much the one that has like the two lenses on the very front that will allow you to view your pictures in stereoscope vision. You can also do it through a VR headset, or you can use a poor man's one, which is, you know, to view from your phone through like a box. We got one of those boxes as a giveaway. That was kind of really neat, but it was really great to see that lens in person because I've seen that lens on press release so many times now. And most camera stores will not even have that in there because it's not really a direct application for photography, but I thought that was interesting to see. A few other notable things I would say is neat is to pretty much see a Honda concept car. They have the Saloon, which is really nice, futuristic. I believe is going to be all electric platform. They just have two cars spinning on a platform. That was neat. But also equally as exciting and as confusing as well is that Sony and Honda also have a partnership with each other, and you may have seen this before. Sony has a car called the Afeela. This time around, we got a chance to sit in a car, go through the demo, go through the driving demo, and we're talking about all the different AI technologies, the sensor technologies they have. There's like an OLED screen that runs pretty much across the dash of the car. It's really neat to see, and based on what they have told us at CES, pretty much this car is going to be available for pre-order in 2025 with, I believe, delivery in 2026. We'll see what the price point and everything is, because I mean, unless you're a major auto manufacturer, it's rather difficult to jump into the you know, the car game, especially in the US market where it's really competitive, and electric cars are really, for a majority of the part, are dominated by Tesla. Yes, other companies are there. Hyundai is making a big splash, but it's still a lot of Tesla cars that we see on the road, and not so much from many other companies, Polestar, VW, for instance. So that would be something very interesting to see. So we'll see where this goes. And like I said, Honda is also currently developing their own Acura electric car as well at this point. So it's kind of like very interesting where Honda is really taking this and which way is going to be the path that they're going to go forward, because it's going to create some confusion in the market. So I've also seen a few autonomous driving taxis like what we see in Westworld. Those are really neat. I wish those would come to our street. That would be really kind of cool, because the way how the door opens and everything is just kind of neat. And yeah, there was more things to see at CES. I mean, John Deere was there showing their big like tractors. Caterpillar was there showing their big equipment company. There's Hyundai, like different manufacturing equipment that are pretty much these heavy machineries. And a lot of the concept from this year's CES was taking these heavy machineries but making them autonomous, so that, you know, you can recharge them on like the go. You don't have somebody driving them anymore, as somebody in the control center. I think that's very interesting to see as far as how that's going to really integrate into real life and a job site or something like that. I think we're still a few years out still from that. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up just right there for now. If you have made it this far, thank you very much. You're going to see something very funny to end, because I was there with my friend Jeff. So we also went to White Castle. So as Archie Jeff went to White Castle, I'll show you some pictures that we have captured from the show. There may be a few clips after this. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Any questions or comment, as usual, leave them below. Give this a like, and in Art we trust.